The only controversy here is that I keep buying the same comic books. Hey there, today I have an unboxing video, and in this video I'm going to open up an order of comic books that I placed with Mile High Comics. Now I've noticed that I do have a lot of comic book ordering of specific issues, ordering from specific stores on repeat, and that is because I have a lot of trust and faith built up with the stores and really understand that when my numbers kind of align themselves, that I have to go ahead and make the purchase of those specific books because it does make the most financial sense in terms of trying to add as much value to my collection as possible. Now, you just can't avoid a lot of what's going on in terms of CGC, negativity, fraud, bad practices, and things like that. And it's one of the things I just steer clear of. I really try and stay away from all of that. And if placing an order with Mile High Comics is a bad idea because their books are too expensive, prices are too high, it just doesn't make sense, and you'd rather daily trade Hulk 181 slabs, by all means, we're all in this hobby doing our own thing, and it's great because you should have the freedom to do so. It's just something that I personally steer clear of. I try to target raw books that have potential if they are graded, but I really try and shy away from buying the bigger books graded. I will certainly dabble in buying already slabbed comics. Several behind me I recently added to my collection. Those were already slabbed. But for the most part, I really enjoy raw comic books, adding them to my personal collection, and then maybe deciding if I would want to clean and press those books or eventually submit them for grading based on my own criteria of doing so. Now, if you're interested in hearing me talk about more specifically around the CGC issue, where there's at least one seller that we know of that was moving books in and out of the slabs, you can check me out on Tuesday, January 2nd, 2024, on the Comic Doctor YouTube channel, where I'll be joining him on his Tuesday night live stream at 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, where we'll be talking about potential solutions of how we can better protect our slabbed comic investments. But for now, what I'd rather do is talk about the raw books that I acquired from Mile High Comics and why I targeted some of these books in particular. Some of the books you've seen before, I've seen before, and I do enjoy buying multiple copies of comics that I love. A lot of folks say, buy what you love. I don't mind that, but I also subscribe to buy what you know. And if you see a book that you like and it's at a good price and you have a copy or two already, it makes sense to add an additional copy because you understand the book, you know the creators, you know the story, you understand the value, and you love it. And why not try to make sure that you have the highest grade and the book in the best condition possible? So let's take a look at the comic books that I picked up in this order from Mile High Comics. All right, here is the order that was shipped to me from Mile High Comics in late December of 2023, shipped in this FedEx envelope. Whenever I'm ordering from Mile High Comics, I make sure that I unlock shipping, and I always choose FedEx when I'm checking out. It's no additional cost, and you get free shipping when I believe it's above $65 in your order. The shipping is quick, it's always reliable, love it. One of the reasons I don't mind paying a little bit extra for Mile High is their very streamlined shipping process. So let's go ahead and get this opened up. Okay, pretty easy to get that unpacked. Not a lot of scotch tape, love it. I could probably open that order from Mile High blindfolded, and let's see which books I picked up from Mile High Comics. The first book is Dazzler number 3. Dazzler becoming quite the big deal these days, with all the controversy over that singer that's going to be possibly playing her in the upcoming Deadpool 3 movie. Well, that remains to be seen, but nevertheless, I still like picking up the single issues from her solo titled series, and this issue's fun as it features Doctor Doom on the cover here with Dazzler. Now, this next book, this was the big book for me in this order. This is Venom #3. This issue features the first full appearance of Null, written by Donny Cates with art and cover art by Ryan Stegman. And you may have loved or hated this run of Venom, but I enjoyed it. I really think that Null is an interesting concept, but I just feel like he was so overused and overblown there in pretty much 2019 through 2021. King in Black and all of that. I much prefer more of the subtle approach where a really cool character is introduced and let them come back again in the same series and keep building on their origin. We don't need all of these other tie-ins. And so I feel like the character was really overused quite a bit. But this issue popped up for sale on Mile High and had to jump at the chance to acquire it, as the prices for most comics have come back down. But these really hot books that were interesting to me when I got back into the hobby in 2019. These were on all the hot lists, and of course, I was interested in them because I was trying to understand what books were hot, and really like now how here in late 2023, early 2024, these books are still available and becoming more affordable. And always wanted to add this book to my collection, featuring the first appearance of Null. All right, next up we have this one. I think is just showing up in every order now, whether I order it or not. This is X Infernus #1. In all sincerity, the reason I do keep ordering this is because it's available for a round cover price for Mile High Comics, but also, yes, the value as well. But I've ordered this book several times, and the couple of issues that I have unpacked and graded have been under 9.4, and I'm trying to find a 9.4 and above copy to consider grading. You really do need this book in a 9.8 to have a lot of value in a CGC slab copy. But I feel like I could buy this book with every order for around $4 or $5, and I think it's still a good pickup trying to find that elusive 9.8 candidate. Next is Captain America 216. This is from 1977 with cover art by Gil Kane. These are books that just show up on Mile High Comics every so often. Therefore, I would say a decent price for the era, but then when you start to factor in the range of near mint, which is 8.5 to 9.4, maybe even Mile High might say 9.2. Based on my data, it's around 9.2. And so when I look at that and factor in my risk, and then hopefully acquiring a book that maybe has the ability to be cleaned and pressed into a 9.8 candidate, possibly, I like to grab these from Mile High, and you can see just the type of condition. I already noticed a little blemish here right by Cap's knee. There's a bit of a color break, or maybe just some color loss there. And then right here by the staple looks to be some sort of color rub there or dirt that could come out with a dry clean. And then maybe just a slight stack increase. But overall, I like to acquire these books from the mid to late 70s, early 70s if I can, although Mile High is aware of the scarcity of those books and they price those accordingly. But this is a book that, again, when I see Mile High list it as an issue that they added to their back catalog, I like to pick those up at a reasonable price. Here's another example. Here's Avengers 159, also from 1977, and also with cover art by Gil Kane. We've got cover action here featuring Iron Man, Thor, Vision, and Graviton, the Lord of the Fundamental Force. I thought that was Tim Duncan, but apparently is Graviton. And here again, just the condition, Mile High, near mint, high grade, whatever you want to call it. Just love picking up these books, and I'd much rather pay a few extra dollars to get books, comics like these in this high grade, high condition. Great use of the primary colors here. Fun action sequence here on the cover of Avengers 159. Not a key book, but a key now to me as it is in high grade. Next, along the same lines, Man-Thing #1. I have this book slabbed in a 9.8, and my 9.8 copy came from Mile High Comics. So kind of back to my theory, buy what you know. I see this book. I have several copies. They're all in high grade. They're all from Mile High. So I continue to kind of invest in those types of purchases. And this book looks to be in great shape as well. I don't want to speculate already that I have another 98 candidate on my hands, but you do see the slightly miswrapped spine, but for the most part, looks to be in great shape. I mean, just look at these corners, really nice there. Just the wrapping on the corner, kind of what you'd expect to see in a high grade copy. So always like adding that book, Man Thing #1. That's the second solo series for Man Thing. Another book that's very common to me that I love, Seduction of the Innocent, #1, a 3D Seduction of the Innocent featuring cover art by Dave Stevens. I was going to say arguably my favorite cover. I don't know who I'd be arguing with other than myself, but always love this cover. And just a great book. A little bit of a stacking crease there. Got to look more closely at that corner. Looks pretty good. It's just suffering from some bindery tearing there, as well as that corner just a little touch. So, 9.6 maybe, hopefully 9.4 on a bad day, but just a gorgeous, gorgeous book, Seduction of the Innocent, 3D #1, cover art by Dave Stevens. And the last book that I took a chance on, this is All New Ghost Rider #1, cover art by Scotty Young. I am not the biggest Scotty Young fan. I do appreciate his art, and I do think some of his renditions of characters are clever. And I thought this one was. We have here, this is the Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider on the front cover. And this all-new Ghost Rider #1 is popular because it is the first appearance of Robbie Reyes. It is also his origin, and it's a book with some value. And this one I decided to pick up and take a chance on because of all of the things I mentioned, in combination with it being a Scotty Young cover. So it has a couple of things, or a few things going for it. And, all that's stopping it now is, what kind of condition is it in? I do notice that there's some markings here in the staple. I'll have to kind of see how that affects the condition. Now, that's not something that I want to see in a 9.8 candidate. We definitely see some markings or dimpling from the staple here, so that's not great. So this might have been a little bit of a miss. Still a high-grade copy, but for a modern book, you don't want to see a corner like that either. So this might have been a bit of a miss, but still a fun book to own. It's still a valuable comic raw. So now what I want to do is take a look at what I paid for these books and compare the purchase price against fair market value to see if I added any raw value to my collection if I were to keep these books raw. And then if I were to send these books in for professional grading, we can take a look at those values as well. All right, here is the order summary for the order that I placed with Mile High Comics on December 17th, 2023. I was invoiced $184.40. I did not have to pay shipping and handling for this order. I did have to pay $6 insurance. It's optional, but I always add the insurance. And then I distributed the $6 across the 8 books in the order to determine my total cost, as I do like to track door to door what it cost me to acquire the book. Now here in column Z is that total cost for each book, and then the column right next to it, the column AA raw value. This is the raw value of the comic after the cost as compared to the cover price fair market value, which is here in column U. So just going through the items in this order, all new Ghost Rider #1, the Scotty Young variant, has a fair market value of $46. I paid $34.35 to acquire that book for a nice $11.65 value add. Avengers $159, $42 according to cover price, and that cost me just under $22 to acquire for about a $20 value add. Captain America $216 looks to be the only loser in this order. $7 according to cover price, and it cost me $11.95 to pick it up. Now, I'm not trying to make excuses here, but again, I do like to pick these books up and pay a little bit extra for them just because of the age of the book and the consistency with which Mile High delivers those books from the 1970s in high grade. That's typically why I go ahead and spend the extra money. But it was only around $12, so it's not like I'm taking a huge risk here. So even if it's worth $7, I paid $5 more to acquire it. You kind of get the idea here. Hopefully we'll see some value bumps when I put in the actual grades. Dazzler #3 cost me $8.75 for that book. It is worth $11 according to cover price. Man Thing #1, a $40 book. only cost me $20.75 for a nice $19.25 value add. Seduction of the Innocent, number one, $41. It cost me $30.75 for that book. And then jumping down to X Infernus, why I always pick it up, $5.15 total to acquire that book. And it's a $10 book according to cover price. So that's why I like to pick up that one. Now, going back to Venom number 3, cover price is listing that book raw at $150. We'll kind of see as I plug in the grades and look at the CGC values if that really holds up. But I thought for about 50 bucks, again, I'm making a big assumption, and the assumption is I'm getting the book in near mint, and that could be anywhere from like an 8.5 to a 9.8. And for me, acquiring that book, a very recognizable modern cover, the first appearance of Null, art by Ryan Stegman, a lot of stuff going for it. A book also that I kind of coveted when I got back into the hobby, so it has kind of a special meaning for me. I'm a big fan of the character Null. Again, I think that maybe put him on the shelf for a while, bring him back down the road. I still feel like long term it would be a nice pickup for me to have in my collection, and went ahead and took the plunge and picked it up for 50 bucks. If we're just looking at the numbers, of course, it looks like a $99.25 value add. If we're just looking at total cost against the cover price data, again, it's not an exact science, but it kind of gives you a rough idea of what these books are worth. Now, I do expect near mint to be 9.4, even though I'm told many times that's not true, and I will say that every time just because I think it's hilarious. So let's put in 9.4s because I did purchase all of these as near mint copies from Mile High Comics. And now let's start to look at the cover price fair market value adjustment along with the CGC potential values. Now you can see Venom dropped to $97 in a 9.4 raw. So the total raw value add fell slightly to $102.60, where it was previously $155.60, and again, that was the adjustment pretty much for Venom number 3. If I were to send all of these books off to CGC blindly and assume because they're near mint, I'm getting 9.4s back from CGC, that I would be able to add $214 of value to my collection if I were to get the books graded. So it does seem to me that the better move is to send these books off for grading than to keep them raw. But let's dig in a little bit deeper here to look at the numbers. CGC fair market value of that all new Ghost Rider number 1, $100 in a 9.4. So for me, acquiring that book for $34.35, it made sense because after all of the grading fees and the shipping to CGC and so forth, it looks to be an additional $33 of value added to my collection. Avengers 159 in a 9.4 at $90. This is, again, the next one, Captain America 216, why I go ahead and pay a little bit more for books from Mile High if they're listed in near mint. We talked about the fact that it was $12 to acquire the book, but only worth $7, but yet in a 9.4, the CGC fair market value is $88. So that is a pretty large $43 value add, more than the all-new Ghost Rider number 1 that unfortunately may end up being a 9.4 or maybe even a 9.2. But if Cap 216 hits the 9.4, that's a nice $43 value add. Dazzler number 3, nobody wants that book. It's not that interesting, but I want it. It's $50 in a 9.4, and it's got Doctor Doom on the cover. You can't go wrong with that. Man-Thing number 1 in a 9.4 is $71. Seduction of the Innocent 3D, $121 in a 9.4, and Venom number 3, $105 in a 9.4 again. So this is kind of the risk mitigation that I kind of bake into my formulas. I'm going to go ahead and pay $50 for the book. If it's not a 9.8 candidate and it drops, what is it in a 9.6, a 9.4? Well, in a 9.4, it's still over $100, so it would make sense to go ahead and send it to CGC. And if I didn't want to keep it in a 9.4, I could potentially sell it and use the proceeds to try again, maybe buy another copy from Mile High, or go ahead and try and find a 9.8 slab, or even a 9.6 if I wanted to just do one grade up on an upgrade. I have options here if my ultimate goal is to have Venom number 3 in a CGC 9.8. X Infernus 9.4 is 37 bucks. Not the wisest decision if I wanted to send that in, as it would kind of be a wash, but pretty interesting that it's even holding some value here for, like I said, it's $4.40 from Mile High, $5.15 after I add in insurance. Now, What's fun is I want to take a look at the ceiling of these books. What if they were all 9.8 candidates? What kind of value would I be looking at to add to my collection? And we can see here in a 9.8, these 8 books have a max value of $1,052, which is great for 8 comic books, where I spent $184.40. I think it's worth the risk. Now, hopefully you notice too, in a 9.8, all 8 of these comics are over $100. I try to not necessarily only buy books that have a 9.8 value of 100 or more, but it is certainly nice to kind of just roughly target that and say, I'd like to acquire some high grade book that I'm going to spend 10, 20, 25, even 30, $40 on. It's just a nice number when you're doing the math. It keeps the math simple. If you're going to buy a book for 30, it costs 30 to grade it. And if it hits the 9.8, you've got $100 9.8, $40 a value add, just kind of doing some basic math there. But the big winner here, Seduction of the Innocent 3D, $370 in a 9.8, almost $200 for Venom number 3. That has really dropped from when this book first came out and Null was the hottest character in comics. But still, for a $200 9.8, I wanted to go ahead and spend $50 to see if I could get it that way instead of just going ahead and spending the $200 outright for the 9.8 slab. $200 also for Captain America 216. So this book went from The Biggest Loser to now a book with the greatest potential here. If that book ends up grading out as a 9.8 candidate or potentially a clean and press candidate into a 9.8, I have a nice $155 potential value add here. So I'll let you look at the rest of the numbers. I don't necessarily believe all these are 9.8s. The all new Ghost Rider I don't think is a 9.8. If it was $181 there, but you can kind of see the values here versus the total cost as far as why I justified placing this order. So in the end, a really nice mix of comics. They're comic books that I had chased for quite some time, or at least tracked and wanted added on my own personal want lists and wish lists. I don't necessarily have these very specific time-boxed goals where maybe I need to find a book at a certain place at a certain time or before a particular date. I always allow the deals to kind of come to me, and what I try and do is always acquire knowledge, always acquire data, and that way when the comic books and the prices are presented to you, you can then more easily recognize those books and the values and understand there's definitely some opportunity here to add some great books to your comic book collection. Let me know what you think about the books that I picked up. If you have any comments about the current state of slabbing books and CGC, you're welcome to leave a comment on this video, but you might want to check out the Comic Book Doctor's live stream on Tuesday, January 2nd, where I'll be a guest talking with him about the controversy, but more so around what can we do to kind of improve things and make it a safer place for all of us to collect. Thanks for watching. Happy collecting, and see you next time.